Welcome to the What's Our Verdict podcast, where we fashion ourselves cinematic judge and jury. My name is JJ Carter. I'm here with my co-hosts Mattson,
Better read than dead,
and Alec Burgess.
Let's get it.
We appreciate you tuning in. Go ahead, hit that follow, subscribe, like, bell notification, all those fun buttons that help you keep up with our episodes and watch that stuff. You can find us wherever fine podcasts are found, and also on YouTube, which you probably already know, depending on where you're listening or watching. So, yeah, hit subscribe. We appreciate it. Today, we are reviewing Sleepers. It was released. Oh, darn. I pulled up the wrong thing. It was released in 1996. Normally I tell you the date, but you're just going to have to deal with it. So it was released in 1996. It was written and directed by Barry Levinson, based on the book of the same name, written by Lorenzo Carcaterra. It stars Jason Patric, Brad Pitt, Billy Crudup, Ron Elder, Joe Perino, Brad Renfro, Jeffrey Wigdor, Jonathan Tucker, Minnie Driver, Robert De Niro, Kevin Bacon, and Dustin Hoffman, and a whole lot more that I just was like, I'm done putting names on this list, which I kind of
so many
about. But yeah, I mean, it's immense how many people were in this movie, whether they were well known or not well known,
or would later be well known.
Yeah, exactly. Like some of the kids have become quite big in their own right. The kid that plays young Shakes was in The Sopranos. It's pretty impressive, some of the parts that these guys have been in and some of the parts that others were in. It's pretty good.
Well, JJ, I want to, since this is your movie, I think you should tell our listening audience why you recommended this.
Yeah, it's funny. This is one of those movies that I forgot about. Like, I watch it and then I forget about it. I actually saw it in theaters in 96. We snuck into it because it had Brad Pitt in it, and it had, at the time, Jason Patric was huge, and Robert De Niro obviously is Robert De Niro. So, and Kevin Bacon. So we heard all these names and we didn't know any better. I mean, I was 15, so we obviously weren't supposed to go to this movie. It was rated R, but we snuck into it in Kentucky.
For shame, JJ.
Yeah, and then we watched it, and at 15, we wished we hadn't. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so as a kid, like, I didn't appreciate the movie and the story it was portraying and the difficult topics that it's covering. And, it's a very dark and heavy movie, but it's so well acted. But for me, I picked it because it's one that we were watching other stuff on HBO, and I was flipping through everything, and I saw it and went, oh, man, I haven't watched Sleepers in ages. And then it came about that we had issues with Baby Geniuses too. So
I gotta mail that to you still.
Yeah, you do.
Shit.
I don't want it.
I know. I don't either, but it's happening. I already confirmed with Charles that we'd do it. So that we had the DVD to pass around. And we were screwed either way because he offered to send it to his copy to us.
Wait, you talked to Charles? What?
Through email. Yeah, he emailed me.
Oh, so. Charles.
He listened to us say we weren't able to do it.
You're a thorn in my side.
So, yeah, he emailed us. So, yeah, I was flipping through HBO after watching The Little Shop of Horrors and saw it and went, man, I want to watch this. So then when it came up that we would need a movie, I recommended it because it's so good. And then I watch it and I remember why I watch it, but I also remember why I take a lot of time in between watching it because it is a heavy movie. It's a hard movie to watch in moments, but across the board, in my opinion, it's some of the best acting out there. And it's how could it not be with the cast that's in it? And it tells a hard story, but it tells it in a way that doesn't shy away from anything, but it also does it in a not shock value. And then on top of that, it's the Count of Monte Cristo is one of my favorite books. And so the tie-in to the Count of Monte Cristo and how that whole thing plays out, it's just an all-around entertaining movie. And just, I enjoy watching the acting, not to mention the music's composed by the legendary John Williams, and it is so good in the background when all the moments and yeah.
What's funny about that, I find myself, while the music was good, the acting was so good that I didn't Like the music doesn't actually stick out to me. I just finished watching a little while ago. Not that the music's bad, but I think the acting is so good that I just didn't even need it.
Yeah.
Or they work so well together. I just never even thought about it. It just was perfect in that regard.
I always notice it in like the happier moments. Like, so this movie will transition you from like really dark stuff that's going on with these guys and these kids, and then it'll move to like these flashbacks of them playing in the hydrant, and you know what I mean? And this music transitions to where it's quite interesting because it's really dark, and then it'll move into what feels like a happier melody, but it's still in it's not happy. It's just a more upbeat melody. The key is still very it's a very minor key, so it still has this melancholy feel to it. So it's just really, like you say though, Mattson, it plays really well to what's going on. But that's the genius of John Williams, right? The guy knows how to draw you in. But yeah, I'm interested to hear what you guys thought, because I could gush about this movie for hours. But this was your guys' first time seeing it, both of you, right?
Yeah, I'd never seen it before, never heard about it before, didn't even know it existed. And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
For me, I love that the Count of Monte Cristo has become, like in cinema, the de facto prison breakout standard. Like you have it mentioned in this movie, it's all about prison break. You have it in the Shawshank Redemption, where it gets a little mention. It's almost like it pops up everywhere as the gold standard for how to break out of prison, which is so cool because it's such a good book.
Yeah.
And then I actually, after I watched this, because it put up that title card about how this is, based on Lorenzo's kind of telling in his book, and how there's some dispute over whether it actually happened or not. So I was reading about it, and I came across a movie review from a guy that I really hated what he said. And JJ, you might have come across the same review. We could talk about it later near the end. I'll give my little rant. But I was like, oh, this makes me like this movie even more after seeing what this bozo wrote about it. But yeah, surprisingly, I really enjoyed it. Thought it was great.
Yeah, I don't think there was anything I really disliked about it. I think at times, did I want, and action's not the right word, but this movie definitely moves at a slower pace for sure. And not that I minded that, but I will say a 2.5 hour runtime. There are at times like there's some things maybe they could have cut out where I think JJ said it best though. This movie is really good at, but it requires a significant time investment and an emotional investment. Like this is not a movie that you can kind of just have on in the background or be watching, but your attention gets diverted because you go make a snack or something like that, or you're talking to someone. The dialogue is critical in this movie, and you need to be present seeing the emotions of the actors on screen. And that's not a knock on the movie, but I do think the one area I did suffer a little bit was just the pace of the movie was a little slow for me at times.
Yeah, I think that's when I watch it, it's interesting for me because, and I've talked about this on the podcast a few times, I'm not a huge fan of movies that their backbone of the movie is a narrator, right? So where we're getting tons and tons of exposition to tell this story. And so it's really interesting how much I enjoy this movie, because 90 probably not that much, but 75% of it is a lot of exposition, and you see a lot of the things on the screen as the narrator is voiced by Jason Patrick, the character of Shakes, who walks you through everything that's going on and is explaining the emotion, which again in most cases I don't love, but I think in this movie it serves as like kind of a buffer for just the raw awful things that are happening to these kids in this prison, and then as adults going through this process of the explaining this really complex setup of revenge against these guards and what happened there in the whole prison itself. So it's really interesting to me how much I like it, but you're right, Mattson, it does slow down to a crawl at times. And I think there were times, especially, and I don't want to downplay the emotional moments, those moments that are really hard to watch. But I think they spent a little more time than needed in some areas with the repeat sense of abuse, or I don't need to see every single time. And I guess you don't, but there's like 3 or 4. I think there's 4 moments where people are getting pulled out. The kids are getting walked down that hall. And I think you could have bookended it with the first time he walks them down the hall and you realize what's going to happen. Then there's a middle one where it's just 1 or 2 of them in their cells. And I think that's enough. And then you could bookend it with that final moment when Shakes is about to get out. So they all have to take that final walk. And I think you could have shortened the football scene. I think.
Yeah, the football one, that was the one where I got it, but I was just like, okay, it feels off brand.
Yeah, it was long. I appreciated the need for understanding that.
Yeah, the tying at the end, like I get that.
The kid gets killed because of it, but
they went ham in that football game.
Yeah. Maybe think of the longest yard, and the longest yard took footage from this movie.
Yeah.
Dude, I was just thinking about when I was 14, right? Growing up with Javier, he and I were 14, and we would get into shenanigans like this with like our youth leaders, right? So different dynamic, but still full grown dudes, and we would bounce off of them.
Yeah.
Like, we wouldn't be able to tackle anybody. We would just
well, these guards must have been a bunch of just sissy like white dudes or something. Because 14-year-old boys, yeah,
or these kids are tough as nails.
Yeah.
Well, some are super tough, and you're gonna have some big ones. But still, I'm sorry. I'm like the guards should have won. Like you got problems.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I laughed because like it showed like the one guard. Like I expect to see one of these kids drop kicking a guard, but they show one of the guards drop kicking the kid
on his
like,
balls.
Holy shit.
And they had the spikes and everything.
Yeah.
The only thing that made me laugh was the youngest friend, the one that turns into the lawyer. I forget his name. He's like running the football and scores a touchdown. And I guess they had so many blockers. So I'm like, that little kid, like he would have just been destroyed. Like,
no, that little kid is John. So
that's
he's the one with the goatee and the weird beard.
But he would have died in that football game because he was so teeny back then. Like, he would have just been destroyed.
That was funny because he looks like he's 10. Like, why would you pick him to be on the team?
I will say that it looks like a 10 tough-year-old. He had quite the jaw, that actor. I was like, oh, dang. Like, he couldn't have found a better person to come from Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah.
What was surprising to me, though, I didn't know at the end that I had suspicions that this could have been based off a true story, but I didn't really know until they talked about it. I wasn't surprised at the end when, obviously, I think was this in New York State?
Yeah, New York.
Yeah, where they completely denied everything. I mean, what are they supposed to be like? Oh yeah, this is totally true. Like, but I mean, sad that this stuff probably still goes on today to a lot of extent. Like, people in power, man. I mean, this movie beats it home that people can do a lot of things with power.
Yeah. Oh, it is happening today because just a year and a half ago, they found all those mass graves of indigenous kids who were sent to boarding schools that were killed or
I did not know that.
Died and then buried them. Yeah, they found them in Canada somewhere. A few of them where there was like 150, 200 bodies in a single grave underneath a church or boarding school. Yeah, it's still happening. It's ridiculous. That's why I don't trust the government.
I don't trust most institutions. How about that?
There you go. I will say I thoroughly enjoyed De Niro's performance as Father Bobby. This to me is how a church leader should be. And the problem is, for every Father Bobby, there's 1,000 Nokes.
Yep.
In every single institution, like JJ said. And it sucks because you have the Father Bobbies who are ride or die for these kids, right? You know, and I think that honestly, the best kind of leaders are the people who fucked up as kids. Because they've been there, they've done it, they know. They're coming at you, they'll come at you in real time, like, hey, don't do it. I know you're gonna do it, but don't do it. And when you do it, I'll be there to help you out. But I thought he was the best part of this movie. The character. And
would you really do what he did though? That, I mean, that's a huge moral dilemma right there. Are you gonna actually be truthful to the letter of the law, and are you gonna follow the spirit of the law? Like, I think that was just an interesting position right there.
Oh, I'm doing what he did 100%.
Yeah, I'm perjuring myself, no
Yeah.
questions. Yeah.
With how
No doubt.
corrupt the legal system is, absolutely.
Yeah, because for me it goes.
I'll take my chances with God in the afterlife.
But you think
Yeah.
he
If
had
that's what gets me sent down to hell
you knew
from
he
all
knew
my other
though
sins.
that the two guys, their names again escape me, that were on trial that already had murders out for them. He had to have known that yes, they're murders, and two, they're probably gonna either end up dead or kill more people. But he still decided to give them that win, and I guess maybe in his mind he did that because of all the injustices that happened before them, that they just needed something positive in their lives, because since that correctional facility, since that point on in their lives, it effectively ruined them.
Well, it's also agency, right? He's giving them their agency because they had just the worst possible atrocities happen to them that put them in this position. So he's almost wiping their slate clean for him, right? After this, he's kind of saying, you do what you do. I'm here for you type of a thing, but you're both adults. But he's taking care and kind of wiping the slate clean from when they were kids, saying, hey, I'm here for you. I'm always going to be Father Bobby. Right? Like, this is a clean slate. I'm walking away type of a thing, but you know where my congregation is. Swing on by. So that's how I took it, as he's giving them back their choice.
I'm a little more petty than that. Like, I think about it from the perspective of, and maybe petty's the wrong word, but like maybe the chicken and the egg conversation is the right thing to say here. Look, Hell's Kitchen in the 70s, these kids were most likely, I mean, obviously you see that they're running deliveries for King Benny early on, so it's not like they weren't involved in underhanded things, but would those two have become what they were to the extent that they were had they not been abused, right? Had they not been put in that situation that does some serious damage to you psychologically, emotionally, in all those arenas, would that have translated differently to what they become? And me, if in Father Bobby's situation, if they had killed anyone else, I wouldn't have done it. But that one human being that they kill, that's the one time in my brain that I'm going to perjure myself, because they don't deserve to go to jail for that murder, in my opinion. But that's because I have a harsh, and I think most people do. I don't want it to sound like I'm saying I'm the only one that would take that stance. I don't believe that. I think there's plenty of cases where child molesters and things like that go to prison, and they certainly do not have a good time in prison. It doesn't go well, because we need to protect our children, and it's terrible that things like that happen. So for me, that's an extension of what I would do if they had said, if they had told Father Bobby when they came out of the boys' home and said, here's what happened, and they do everything they can to make these guys go through the justice system that way. To me, and it's an extension of that. So it's almost like that situation exists in a vacuum for me, where I can forgive that, whereas I wouldn't have perjured myself if they had just killed some random person on the street, right? But the situation, that's a tough one, right?
Yeah, I think what you laid out, that makes a ton of sense to me. I wish I could pull my dad in here. My dad, for listeners, is a professor of economics, but he specializes in game theory. So it's all about decisions humans would make. And man, that one would be an interesting dilemma, because I could see a lot of people, I think a lot of people want to say, just like we are, that we'd swing as the priest did in this movie and do that. But man, what they showed a little bit of is the priest going through the internal dialogue of thinking. I think I'd lose a lot of sleep. Just to be completely frank, I think it would be very, because if that's a man of faith and a man of principles, and he's tried to leave a lot of that life behind, I think I would personally think about a lot of, well, I want to do right by these individuals. There's a lot of injustice, but what's going to happen after this? Am I just going to let two killers walk free and kill more people? And I don't know if I feel exactly great about that, but at the same time, you kind of want to back up your boys in a sense. I don't know. It's tough. I know I would personally lose a ton of sleep over it, and I want to say I would do that because I have done things to a lesser extent that would fit that to a much lesser extent. Let's be completely frank. I'm happy to lie and put on a good face for the people that I like and help them out, but I've never been pressed to something that grand before. Because if it did backfire, like if that other lawyer screwed up, then I'm getting screwed too because I'm purging myself. So, but I love that conundrum. I love movies that make me think like that.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what this movie is about is what extent are you going to go as the friend, as the lawyer, and the individual in the newspaper to help your other friends who you know are really bad people, but you also know that they're bad because of what JJ talked about. Most likely because that freaking correctional facility ruined them.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the other pieces of this movie that I love is Brad Pitt's character, Michael. Like the fact that he became a lawyer and then went into the prosecution side of being a lawyer and to simply make sure to find out a way for this to happen. You know what I mean? Like that level of, again, that Count of Monte Cristo level of
revenge.
Yeah, of plot. And because that's one of the things that I love about the Count of Monte Cristo when I read it is that this is the epitome of the long game, right? Like you are so hell-bent on your revenge that you dedicate your life and however long it will take to get there. And I love that he stopped being a lawyer, period. Like, you know what I mean? Like he just was like, that was the only reason I did what I was doing. It's done. I don't care. And now I can go live my life. So to me, like that comparison of you have Tommy and John who have turned into killers and criminals, and that's how they've dealt with the trauma. And then on the flip side, is Michael that much different? That's the question, right? He might live a life that on the surface seems like it's very law-abiding and it's good, but at the same time, how much of himself has he sacrificed in a different way? And to me, there's not much difference on the surface. There is, right? But down deep, there's not much difference between a Tommy and a John and a Michael and how they've dealt with that, especially when you consider the piece with Minnie Driver's character and the fact that he's so traumatized that he can't even be intimate with this woman that he obviously loves. And I rewound it. I made Casey watch it. She was coloring while we were watching it, and she'd never seen it, which was shocking to me because she usually knows all those movies, especially those dark ones. But she was coloring in the scene on the train when she's sitting in front of him and she's talking about, I wish you told me, and maybe things could have been different. And he's just kind of almost touching her hair. And like, to me, that's like like perfect Brad Pitt, like only Brad Pitt. Like he has some facial expressions that just destroy your soul because you can feel everything that he's feeling just by the expression of his face. I think that's one of the things that makes Brad Pitt so good at what he does. But when he's doing that, like to me, that scene is so emotional because it's him reaching out for the thing that he could have had and wanted so badly, but he couldn't let go of his torture and his damage and his plot for revenge, his need to get even in order to reconcile those two sides of his life. Yeah, it's so powerful and just hopeless and understandable at the same time. I love the depth of this movie.
I really like that it was kind of Michael was the leader of the gang, right? It's Lorenzo's story. He's the one narrating it, but Michael's the one who comes up with the scheme to rip off the hot dog guy. Michael's the one who comes up with the football plan to get back at the guards. And then it's Michael who wraps it all up, and it's his plan to, get revenge. So I thought that was really cool. They continued that throughout the entire movie where, Lorenzo's the one who's telling the story, but it's Michael's show.
Yeah.
Like, he's running with it.
Well, and it's the parts they play are the same as kids as well as the adult. Like you said, he's the plotter, the thinker, the planner. And you've got John and Tommy who are like the doers. They're the go out and get it done. And then you've got in this one, it's Shakes who's the distraction kind of, or like that outsider that's connecting everything together. Like, it's quite interesting to see that dynamic. You're right. As an adult, they're still doing the same thing they did that got them in trouble.
Still running the same cons.
Yeah. And what a terrible way to get yourself put into prison, into the juvenile system, because you stole a fucking hot dog. And the worst part is, I can see the mentality of those kids, right? Like, it's all funny and hilarious. You're like, I'm going to steal a hot dog because I'm hungry. It's easy to do with this plot. Let's take it the next step further because it'll be funny. And then it goes tits up on you on accident. Never intending to go that far. But man, I could see myself doing something stupid like that.
I was watching that entire scene and I was thinking, dude, these kids are brilliant. I was like, I would have ditched the hot dog cart and kept running. They're like, no, here's what we're going to do. We're going to hang it over the steps a little bit and then let it go as soon as he grabs it, because then we can get away.
Yeah.
Dude, that's smart. That's some next level thinking right there.
Yep.
It wasn't smart.
No, it wasn't.
No.
But I guess
good thing I didn't grow up.
I guess since this is like it's a true story that the hot dog cart did kill a man, but man, it was hard. I was trying to think. I was like, could that really happen? Like, I guess it did happen, but
didn't kill him. He was in.
Oh, that's right. Didn't kill him. That's right.
He was in the hospital. It really messed him up, but yeah, didn't kill him.
All right, that makes it. I forgot that they showed him in the hospital bed. Man, that's a pretty stiff punishment though.
Those are heavy. Those things are super heavy. Because if you think about it, they've got like a double, well, it's been back then, especially like the propane tanks.
Mm-hmm.
Those are heavy as it is, but they were bigger, taller propane tanks on those. So they're very heavy. So it could definitely do some damage. Now, I think it would have rolled a little different going down those stairs.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if it, does the physics on that. I need Mythbusters to come in on this and be like, well, would it really go that way?
Yeah, kind of those little wheels stood pretty strong going down those subway stairs.
I'm sure that was a cool scene to shoot. But one of the other scenes that made me kind of chuckle, because it's funny because this movie wasn't overtly funny or meant to be, but the scene with the defense lawyer, who's the actor, I should know his name because he's really famous.
Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, there we go.
My goodness,
I know who he is. I'm terrible.
Just so you know, I struggle with his name like hell.
I forget his name all the time. Yeah, but that scene where he's obviously looking through the script and couldn't find it, and just going and going, and then they're just like, he's like Brad Pitt's character, Michael's just like, and then later at the very end, the friends are like, man, we felt so bad for you because like you were doing so horrible, because they didn't obviously know what was going on, so it'd be more believable. Like, that juxtaposition was always funny to me because they didn't know that it was all kind of set up, and the defense lawyer at times like struggled to say what he needed to say, but then when he did figure it out, pretty convincing overall.
I love when Carol leans over to Shakes and she's like, it's like pulling teeth. Because he just can't, like that scene where you're talking about, he's flipping like 12 pages at a time. And then poor Michael's sitting there at the table, like trying to get him to ask the questions. Like, I loved that part where Michael had anticipated the right stuff for him to ask and pretty much written the script. It's so good. So good. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Dustin Hoffman, the way he like ran his words together. I know he's a method actor and he's fantastic at it, but this was like next level, where he's so fluid with his flip. That's a good question. Yeah, and it's just no pauses. He's just continuously talking.
Yep,
it was wonderful.
Yeah, love it. Couple other people I wanted to mention in this movie that I love is Fat Mancho, the freaking the guy that was constantly as an adult, and then his kids. Like, the guy is so funny.
That's why you never win a stickball.
Yeah, it's just great. And you need that guy, like, that's just random and helps move because it is such a heavy movie. So I appreciate that they threw him in there in serious moments. And it wasn't that he was trying to be funny. It's just his delivery is so out there that it makes you laugh. And then the other one that I really appreciate is like a side character that was so much more important than he really gets credit for, and that being King Benny. Man, that old man, And the fact that it was like, there's no question that Michael choosing to prosecute should have gotten him killed in that situation. And King Benny just shut that shit down. And I love when he tells Shakes, dude, you're in my end of the pool now. You keep your hands clean. You let me handle this side of what's going on. And,
you find a witness.
Yeah, you go get your witness and I'll take care of the ugly stuff. I just enjoyed how that was something else that I loved, and it was really the community, as awful as it is for all the different reasons, comes together to stand beside these guys that really, I don't know, it's such a moral dilemma to know whether or not they should be stood by, you know what I mean? But at the core of what happened to them, I don't know how you don't at the same time. So it's just so interesting, every dynamic in this. But
I love that dynamic. I love the organized crime versus the system dynamic.
Yeah.
The thing that bugs me, and this kind of bugged me in Miss Marvel too for different reasons, but it's the support structure that these kids had.
Yeah.
Like, you have the best support structure. You have a community behind you where if you told Father Bobby on one of his great number of visits up there, like, hey, shit sucks in here, he's going to believe you because he spent time in a facility exactly like this, or it was the same facility. I don't remember which one it was, but he spent time in a facility that's at least like this. You tell him, hey, shit's bad in here. He is going to move heaven and earth to get you out of there, even if that means going to King Benny and working up a scam to bring the whole freaking facility down. So, like, and again, I'm outside looking in. I don't know what these feelings are like for people who have to go through these traumas. But, I mean, when you have an entire community behind you, and you know that your community is behind you because that's what's been beaten into you. I mean, we get that scene where Shake's watching away with his dad, and there's that drug dealer that just got strung up on the lamppost. Yeah. Like, you do not mess with Hell's Kitchen unless you are from Hell's Kitchen. And even then, there's a certain group you can mess with. And, you know, it's a community united together. Like, dude, you can't ask for a better support structure and say, hey, shit's bad up there. You know, do something, King Benny.
Yeah. I love that. One of the first things that the narration talks about is there's a lot of crime in Hell's Kitchen, but the one rule is you don't commit crime from people from Hell's Kitchen. Like, you just don't. And that makes a lot of sense to me. But yeah, I mean, and I guess there's the public service announcement, right? Like, if you're going through something like this, man, tell somebody. You got to have somebody that you can tell, and there's a lot of places that you can call, things like that. So
yeah, suppressing domestic abuse and things that are on par, even lesser extent. Find people to talk to.
Yeah, seriously, email us. We'll give you some resources. We can find them for you. Seriously, it's not okay.
My wife can help give you some advice. That's what she does all the time. That's why she didn't watch this movie with me, because she deals with this stuff.
I texted Mattson. I was like, you might not want to watch this with Taylor. I didn't think about it because she deals with things like this on a daily basis. So it impacts her in a different way than it impacts some of us.
Yeah, she wants to. It's like, it'd be like me watching some movie about helping people get hired. I'd be like, no, I don't want to. Yeah. Just like, get on. I'm done with this shit. Or to JJ watching a movie about how to make a training video. He'd be like, nah, I'm good. Like, pass.
Hard pass.
All right, can I go on my rant now, JJ?
Hang on, let me just mention Kevin Bacon, because Kevin Bacon is like, he's a phenomenon to me, because as a person, if you watch interviews with him, things like that, like, he is such a likable dude. But when he plays a villain, and like, he just, because you just hate this son of a bitch during this movie, even before you know what's happening. When he's like that time when he breaks up the fight and he makes him eat the food off the floor. Oh, what a fucking prick. Like, he plays such a great villain. So kudos to Kevin Bacon. All right. Rant away, Alec. Rant away.
Feel free to edit any of this out. But so I researched this movie a little bit after watching it, and I discovered a review by a Roger Ebert. Ebert.
Boy. Of course.
Yeah. So you can read the review for yourself if you would like to. But this is the passage that made me mad. So it reads, if you doubt that the movie depends on homophobia to justify its morality, ask yourself, if the boys had been beaten but not sexually molested, would the movie play the same way? Would the priest arrive at the same decision? Would the verdict seem as justified? It's necessary to discuss the underlying morality of sleepers because the movie so smugly tries to exploit it, meaning homophobia, without acknowledging it. And I about went through the roof.
Wow.
Because the problem is not homophobia, it's pedophilia.
Yeah.
Like, that is a disservice to the LGBTQ plus community by lumping them in with a group of pedophiles and trying to get some kind of faux justice or clout. And I was pissed because how can you miss the mark by so fucking much?
Wow. Ooh. He even has a ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
He has a quote that says the movie's real subject is a homophobic revenge fantasy, which it justifies with the Cosa Nostra version of honor. Gross. What a prick.
Right.
Yeah, that's not what this movie's about.
I discovered that and I about lost it. And that made me like this movie even more.
Yeah.
Because that is just fucking ridiculous.
I never liked him anyway, as far as his reviews go, but that's
I
gross.
never seen any of his reviews, but
yeah.
I hope he watches this. I have some words for you, Mr.
Pretty sure he's dead, isn't he?
I don't know.
I think he
or is it Siskel that's dead?
Yeah, one of them.
Oh, I'm gonna go get myself a Ouija board and we're gonna have a big long discussion.
Dance on his grave.
No, he's alive. He just can't talk anymore. That's right. He had throat cancer or mouth cancer of some sort. And it's Siskel, his partner Siskel, is the one that died years ago. So anyway. Yeah, that's terrible. No, thanks for bringing it up. Like, it's annoying. Like, that's, and I think it's a valid point to bring up, in that things like this, especially back then in the 90s, were often confused and misinterpreted as, because of the unfortunate, judgment towards the homosexual community and that lifestyle, where people automatically puts it towards this just not good place. And so, but to compare the two is a choice.
The worst, just terrible.
Yeah, they're very different things by they're not even on the same planet. So anyway, that is gross. Yeah. All right. Should we rate this thing?
Let's do it.
Okay, I'll go first since it was mine. Yeah, I love this movie. Again, it's one that I forget about because I can't watch it all the time. It's a hard movie to watch. But when I do watch it, over and over, I say, man, why don't I watch this movie more? And then the longer I watch it, I go, that's right, I remember. It's tough to watch, but I think it's a movie that needs to be watched. I think it's something that it asks the right questions, and it asks the hard questions, and it makes you face it in a way that isn't, here's a hard topic, let's interlace it with just ridiculous amounts of comedy or things to relieve the tension. The tension is not relieved. There are moments you might giggle at something, but the jokes come out as very real life. So they're things that you find funny because you relate to them, not because they're actual comedy. So for me, I appreciate that. The acting is outrageous. The cast list is outrageous. And the story is phenomenal. And I think it really ties with the themes that are out there. And I think it really covers some great topics and does it very well. The music's great. It is a little long. There are some editing things that could happen, but I understand the struggle might be there to figure out what you cut out to make sure that the story's told in an impactful way. So I kind of let that go a little bit with this type of movie, because you got to find the balance of making sure that the impact's there, but still make sure it's edited correctly. But I do think there's some places that could have been edited in this one. I'm going to give it a 4.5 for those reasons. But if you haven't seen this movie and you can handle watching a heavier topic, and I really think you should watch it just because it's so well acted and so well written. I don't think you'll be sorry that you watched it. So there's mine. Alec.
Yeah, it was long, and I started this way too late at night. before I realized what the runtime was, and I was sitting there going, "Oh shoot, that's a bad idea." But it was also like it held my attention for most of the movie. Like I wasn't checking my phone or twiddling my thumbs or kicking Oshi or doing any of the things I normally do while I'm bored in a movie. It was great. I loved personally Dustin Hoffman's performance and Robert De Niro's. And I think that if you want to work with youth in any capacity, you should have to watch this movie, and you should have to watch, Robert De Niro's father Bobby, and use that as the gold standard for how to handle working with youth. And you are not allowed to work with youth until you watch this. And I mean, I was just floored by how great it was. And then after seeing that stupid ass review, it bumped it up even higher. So it's a 4.5 from me too. Nice. Phenomenal movie. Don't know if I'll ever watch it again, just because of how heavy it is. And usually when I rewatch movies, I do it for background noise. This is something you can't really put on as background noise. But I don't think that takes away from it at all. I think it's a powerful movie, and I really enjoyed it. 4.5.
Nice. All right, Mattson.
Yeah, this movie's a solid 4. I'm going to dock it more for it being... the pace, I got to be honest, is pretty slow. It is extremely well acted. The music's amazing. The plot line's amazing. There's nothing wrong with this movie, but it is 2.5 hours. It is an emotional investment, and there isn't really a ton of rewatchability for me just because of the significance of how long it takes, the plot. It's such a good movie, but there's nothing that... I think it's one of the better standalone movies I'll see. Like, it's going to be remembered. I will say I don't know if I love the ending of this movie. I think it could have, the trial could have ended and they could have had, like, they could have shown me a glimpse of they got together for a second and it could have been done, or they wanted to do the true story aspect and say what happened. I was actually surprised you didn't bring that up, JJ, because I know you hate movies that don't end on the high note, but they kind of continue on for another 5 or 10 minutes. This movie did that for me, and I just wanted them to kind of ride off into the sunset. They could have finished the trial and then flash back to the scene of them dancing and holding them up and saying, like, hey, we had our moment. That would have been fine. But the whole dinner scene, I think they just kind of repeated it. They should have just picked one, and it would have worked for me. I didn't love the ending as much as I thought I would, and with it being so long, that's why I'm kind of giving it a 4, because otherwise, so many good actors in here, so well acted. It's not a movie I would say is going to be like a hit for maybe date night, for instance, but like,
fair enough.
Because it's some seriously heavy topics, but something that's impactful and I think makes you think a lot. But yeah, like definitely one of the better 4s in standalone movies I've seen in a long time.
Cool. Yeah, the ending's a good point. I will give, and I think it's the part with them in the water again that I could do it, because for me, I love the diner scene so much where they're singing.
Sure.
And I think it's because of it's the perfect ending in the diner to such a heavy movie, because it's so light and airy, and these guys, you can see that there's a sense of relief, even though all these shitty things happen to a couple of them afterwards. But them singing, like, you get those endorphins back that you haven't had for like 2 hours and 10 minutes, that you're like, oh, thank God there's some relief. So, but no, I get what you're saying. Definitely. Cool. There it is. Sleepers. Go watch it. Be prepared. It's rough, but it's good. Sweet. Mattson, tell everybody where else they can find this.
Yeah, if you want to check us out at whatsourverdict.com, see what's upcoming. Again, I know we've got Miss Marvel's popping up, Bullet Train's about to release something I'm pretty excited about. Need something more lighthearted and fun. You guys need to say the Lord of the Rings and Star Wars ones, the Aurora and...
It's
Aurora?
I don't know where that came from. Where did I get that from?
I don't know where you guys
Sleeping Beauty?
I know that, but I don't know why I said that. What's
Andor
there? Yeah, Andor's. And then what's the Lord of the Rings one?
That's going on TikTok.
Please do roast away. So we got some of those coming up. We're excited about that. I know we're dropping Alec's crazy shit, and he had one of his conspiracy theories we talk about with kind of food and world hunger and things of that nature. We're going to be recording Mattson's cool shit, and then JJ's dumb shit here really shortly. So trying to venture a little bit out of movies and TV as well. So check us out. Come listen to us wherever good podcasts can be found. Especially check us out on TikTok. It's doing some crazy stuff, and we appreciate y'all listening.
Yep, absolutely. As always, we appreciate you tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Cinemagic out.
Whoa!